Take a slow breath and imagine that the modern world has quietly disappeared. No glowing screens. No engines. No notifications. Only mountains. Only wind. Only the faint smell of pine trees drifting through cool night air. Tonight, you're traveling back nearly 800 years to a lonely monastery hidden high among the mountains of medieval Europe. It's the kind of place most people never visited. The nearest village lies many miles away, separated by forests, rivers, and rough stone paths that become nearly impossible after heavy rain or winter snow. No king comes here. No armies march through these hills. Even merchants rarely climb this far. Instead, this monastery exists almost outside of time. If you enjoy peaceful journeys through forgotten history, consider subscribing. And if you're already feeling comfortable, let me know where you're listening from. Now, lower the brightness around you if you can. Get comfortable beneath your blanket. And let the quiet world of the monastery slowly unfold. The sky above is still completely dark. Millions of stars stretch across the heavens like scattered grains of silver. The Milky Way glows brighter than you have ever seen. Without electric lights, the medieval night belongs entirely to the stars. The air is cold enough that every breath becomes visible. Far below, narrow valleys disappear beneath rolling white mist. Small streams whisper through unseen forests. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls once. Then silence returns. The monastery stands atop a rocky ridge. Its thick stone walls have endured storms, freezing winters, earthquakes, and generations of monks. Nothing about the building appears luxurious. Every stone has been placed with purpose. Every beam was cut by hand. Every roof tile carried up the mountain one piece at a time. The walls are nearly a meter thick. Tiny windows protect against winter winds. The roof is covered with weathered wooden shingles darkened by centuries of rain. At this hour, only a few windows glow faintly. Inside, beeswax candles burn beside sleeping monks preparing for another ordinary day. Ordinary, yet carefully ordered. Nothing here happens by accident. Every hour belongs to prayer. Every task belongs to God. Even silence has its proper time. Long before sunrise, a single elderly monk quietly wakes. He needs no clock. After decades of following the same rhythm, his body simply knows. His narrow wooden bed creaks softly as he rises. The mattress is stuffed with straw gathered during last summer's harvest. It is hardly comfortable by modern standards. But comfort is never the goal. The monk folds his rough wool blanket neatly. His robe hangs from a wooden peg beside the bed. The brown wool scratches slightly against his skin as he dresses. Around his waist he ties a simple rope belt. His leather sandals have been repaired many times. Nothing is wasted here. Not cloth. Not wood. Not leather. Certainly not food. Even broken tools often find new purposes. The tiny room contains almost nothing. A wooden stool, a handmade cross, a clay water jug, one handwritten book, a small candle. That is enough. Perhaps more than enough. Outside his room, the monastery remains perfectly still. Stone corridors echo gently beneath quiet footsteps. The floor has been worn smooth by countless generations walking the same path. Candles flicker inside iron holders fixed to the walls. Their light dances across ancient stone. The smell of beeswax mixes with cool mountain air drifting through narrow windows. Far away below the cliffs, darkness still blankets the valleys. Soon, the monastery's great bell will ring. Not loudly, not urgently, simply enough to awaken every brother. For hundreds of years, this same bell has measured each passing day. Unlike us, the monks do not divide life into weekends and holidays. Their calendar follows prayer. The hours themselves become sacred. Every sunrise begins the same way. Every evening ends almost exactly as the one before. To many people, that might sound terribly repetitive. To the monks, repetition creates peace. When nothing changes quickly, the mind begins to slow. Thoughts become quieter. The world becomes smaller. Life becomes easier to understand. In the chapel, several candles already burn before the altar. One young monk kneels alone. His hands are folded. His breathing is slow. He says nothing aloud. Silence itself has become a kind of prayer. The stone walls absorb every sound. Above him, wooden roof beams disappear into darkness. The stained glass windows remain black against the night. Soon dawn will color them with deep reds and blues. But for now, only candlelight fills the room. Outside, frost sparkles across the monastery garden. Tiny herbs sleep beneath the cold earth. The apple trees stand motionless. Even the chickens remain silent inside their wooden coop. Nature itself seems unwilling to disturb the morning. Then, the bell rings. One deep note. Then another. Slow. Steady. Peaceful. Its sound rolls gently across forests. Across valleys. Across distant hills where sleeping shepherds may hear it faintly before drifting back into dreams. Inside the monastery, doors begin opening one by one. Sandals shuffle softly. Robes rustle. Dozens of monks emerge without speaking. No one rushes. There is no need. The bell has rung exactly as it did yesterday. And the day before. And for generations before that. Every brother knows exactly where he belongs. Exactly what comes next. Exactly what this quiet day will ask of him. And somehow, there is great comfort in that certainty. The last stars are still visible when every monk has gathered inside the chapel. No one speaks. There is no whispered conversation about the weather. No discussion of yesterday's work. No greetings. The day begins not with words, but with stillness. The brothers stand shoulder to shoulder in 2 long rows of carved wooden choir stalls. Each place has been worn smooth by generations of hands resting during hours of prayer. The polished wood shines softly in the candlelight, carrying the marks of hundreds of years of quiet devotion. The youngest novice stands near the end of the row. His robe is newer than the others, but his expression reveals the same sleepy eyes anyone might have before dawn. He has only lived here for 6 months. His hands are still rough from learning farm work. His Latin is improving. His knees still ache during the longest prayers. Yet every morning becomes a little easier than the last. At the front of the chapel, the abbot slowly opens a large handwritten prayer book. Its pages are made from parchment, carefully prepared from animal skin. Each sheet required days of work. Each letter was written by hand. Each decoration was painted with tiny brushes made from animal hair. Books are treasures here. Some contain the wisdom of ancient philosophers. Others preserve the teachings of the Church. A few are so valuable that only the oldest monks are allowed to handle them. To lose even one volume would be a heartbreaking disaster. The abbot lifts his eyes. He nods gently. The first chant begins. It is soft, almost a whisper. One single voice rises into the darkness. Then another joins. Soon every monk sings together. Their voices blend into long, flowing melodies without musical instruments. There are no drums, no violins, no organs, not in this remote monastery. Only human voices filling cold stone walls. The sound seems to float upward into the high wooden roof before drifting back down again. The notes are slow, steady, unhurried. Each phrase leaves a long silence behind it, allowing the chapel itself to breathe. If you stood outside the monastery now, you would hear the singing carried across the mountains by the gentle morning wind. Perhaps a shepherd in a distant valley pauses for a moment. Perhaps a traveler wonders where the beautiful sound comes from. Perhaps no one hears it at all. The monks sing whether anyone listens or not. The purpose is not performance. The purpose is prayer. As the chants continue, darkness slowly begins to retreat. The eastern horizon changes almost imperceptibly. Black becomes deep blue. Blue becomes violet. Thin ribbons of silver appear above the distant mountains. Inside the chapel, the candles now seem slightly less bright. Natural light quietly joins them. A narrow beam of dawn slips through one stained glass window. Red, blue, golden yellow. Tiny patches of colored light spread across the stone floor. Dust particles dance inside the beam like floating stars. The monastery is waking. Outside, the first birds begin their morning songs. A robin calls from an old oak tree. Sparrows flutter beneath the roof. Far below, a rooster finally announces the coming day. The mountain air smells fresh and clean. Pine needles glisten with dew. Small white flowers open toward the rising sun. One monk briefly notices the changing light through the window. For a moment, he remembers the farm where he grew up. He remembers his mother baking bread before sunrise. His father sharpening tools outside the family cottage. His younger brothers chasing chickens through muddy fields. He has not seen them in nearly 20 years. Many monks never return home after entering the monastery. Not because they are forbidden, but because this place has become their home instead. The memory passes gently. His attention returns to the chant. There is work waiting after prayer. Gardens need tending. Bread must be baked. Books copied. Candles made. Herbs gathered. Walls repaired. Guests welcomed. No one here is idle. Even silence requires discipline. The final notes of the morning hymn slowly fade. For several heartbeats. No one moves. No one coughs. No one shuffles their feet. The silence after the music feels almost as beautiful as the music itself. The abbot closes the great prayer book with a quiet thump. The brothers bow their heads one last time. Then, without hurry, they begin leaving the chapel. Outside, the first rays of sunlight spill across the mountain peaks, turning the gray stone walls of the monastery into warm shades of gold. A brand new medieval day has begun. And it promises nothing extraordinary. Only simple work. Simple meals. Simple prayers. Yet for the monks, that quiet simplicity is more than enough. The morning prayers have ended. The chapel doors open with a gentle creak, and the monks step quietly into the cool mountain air. The sun has only just climbed above the distant peaks. Golden light spills across the stone courtyard, chasing away the last pockets of mist. Tiny droplets of dew sparkle on every blade of grass. The herb garden, carefully tended for generations, releases the fresh scents of rosemary, sage, mint, and thyme as the first warmth of the day touches its leaves. A blackbird lands on the edge of the old stone well and sings a cheerful melody. Somewhere beyond the monastery walls, a flock of sheep begins to stir. The world is fully awake. Yet inside the monastery, the pace remains calm. No one rushes to breakfast. No one hurries because there is nowhere urgent to be. Every hour has already been planned. Every task has its place. The monks walk in a single line toward the refectory, the monastery's dining hall. Their sandals make soft scraping sounds against the smooth flagstones. The youngest novice glances toward the kitchen door. A warm, comforting smell drifts into the corridor. Fresh bread. Even after months in the monastery, the smell still makes him smile. The refectory is simple but welcoming. Long wooden tables stretch from one end of the room to the other. Each table has been built from thick oak planks, darkened by age and polished smooth by countless hands. There are no decorations except a small wooden cross hanging on the far wall. Large windows allow the morning sunlight to flood the room. Dust floats lazily through the golden beams. The monks stand beside their places. No one sits until the abbot offers a brief prayer of thanks. Only then do they quietly lower themselves onto the wooden benches. Breakfast is modest. Every meal in the monastery is. There are no rich sauces. No roasted feasts. No sugary pastries. Instead, each monk receives a thick slice of dark rye bread, baked before dawn in the monastery oven. The crust is firm and slightly smoky. The inside remains warm and soft. Beside the bread is a small piece of goat's cheese. A handful of dried figs harvested the previous autumn. A wooden cup filled with warm herbal tea. On feast days, there might also be honey. But today is an ordinary day. Ordinary meals remind the monks to remain grateful. One brother quietly passes a basket of fresh apples down the table. Another offers a small bowl of walnuts gathered from trees near the valley. Everything served has been grown, gathered, or prepared by the monastery itself. Very little comes from outside. The monks work hard to remain as self-sufficient as possible. Their gardens provide vegetables. Their orchards produce apples and pears. Their vineyards grow grapes for wine used during religious ceremonies. Their chickens lay eggs. Their bees make honey and beeswax. Even their clothing often begins as wool from sheep grazing on nearby hillsides. Life here depends upon careful planning. A failed harvest could mean a difficult winter. A harsh frost might destroy months of work. Every loaf of bread represents countless hours of labor. Preparing the soil, planting grain, harvesting wheat, grinding flour, heating the great stone oven, kneading the dough, waiting patiently for it to rise. Nothing is wasted. Not even stale bread. Old loaves become soup. Crumbs feed chickens. Every resource matters. As breakfast begins, something unusual happens. No one speaks. Not because conversation is forbidden forever. Only because mornings are meant for quiet reflection. Instead of chatting, the monks eat slowly while one brother stands at a wooden lectern near the wall. He opens a large manuscript. In a calm, measured voice, he begins reading passages from the lives of earlier saints. His voice echoes gently through the hall. Every sentence is clear. Every word deliberate. Some monks listen closely. Others allow the familiar rhythm of the reading to blend softly into the background as they chew their bread. The silence is not uncomfortable. It feels peaceful. Modern meals often happen quickly. People eat while checking messages, watching television, or rushing toward the next appointment. Here, breakfast asks only one thing. Be present. Taste the bread. Feel the warmth of the tea. Notice the sunlight. Listen to the birds outside. Nothing else demands attention. Near one of the windows sits Brother Matthew. He has lived in the monastery for nearly 40 years. His beard has turned almost completely white. His hands are thick with calluses from decades of farming and copying manuscripts. He breaks his bread into small pieces with practiced care. Not a single crumb falls to the floor. He remembers the terrible famine of his childhood, when even a crust of bread could mean the difference between hunger and survival. Those memories never truly leave him. They have taught him gratitude. Each meal remains a quiet gift. Across the table, a young novice watches him. Without a word, the older monk smiles gently. The novice smiles back. No conversation is needed. Some lessons are taught simply by example. Outside, the monastery bell rings once. Not to hurry anyone. Only to remind the brothers that breakfast is ending. Soon the monastery will come alive with work. The gardens await. The bakery grows warm. The scriptorium opens its shutters. The blacksmith's hammer will begin its steady rhythm. The peaceful silence of breakfast slowly gives way to another kind of devotion, work performed with patient hands. For these monks, labor is not separate from prayer. It is prayer. And as the last cups of herbal tea are emptied, the monastery prepares for another quiet, purposeful day beneath the rising medieval sun. As the last crumbs of breakfast disappear and the wooden cups are quietly stacked for washing, the monks rise from their benches one by one. No bell orders them to move. No overseer calls out instructions. Everyone already knows today's work. In a monastery, routine is as dependable as the sunrise. Each brother has a role that rarely changes. Some will tend the vegetable gardens. Others will copy ancient manuscripts. A few will care for the sheep and chickens. One elderly monk will spend most of the day welcoming travelers who happen to arrive at the monastery gates. And deep within the stone building, several brothers return to one of the monastery's warmest and most comforting places, the bakery. Long before the surrounding villages awaken, bread is already being made here. The bakery occupies a corner of the monastery protected from the cold mountain winds. Its thick stone walls hold yesterday's warmth, and the smell greets you before you even step through the heavy oak door. Fresh flour, warm yeast, wood smoke, a hint of honey lingering in the air from loaves baked for a recent feast day. The room feels alive. Unlike the stillness of the chapel, the bakery hums with quiet activity. A large stone oven dominates one wall. Its arched opening glows orange from embers that have burned through the night. The oven itself is enormous, large enough to bake dozens of loaves at once. Heating it takes hours. Once hot, the thick stone slowly releases its warmth throughout the day. Brother Thomas, the monastery's baker, has tended this oven for nearly 25 years. He is not the oldest monk, nor the youngest. But nearly everyone agrees that no one understands bread better than he does. His broad hands bear tiny white scars from countless brushes with hot pans and glowing coals. Yet his movements remain gentle, almost graceful. He begins by lifting a heavy linen cloth from a wooden trough. Beneath it rests the dough prepared before dawn. Overnight, it has quietly transformed. What was once a dense mixture of flour and water has risen into a soft, airy mass. Brother Thomas presses one finger lightly into the dough. The indentation slowly springs back. He nods with quiet satisfaction. It is ready. Beside him, two younger novices dust a long oak table with fresh flour. Tiny white clouds rise into the morning light streaming through the narrow window. The sunlight catches each floating particle until the air seems filled with golden dust. The novices smile as they work. There is something deeply satisfying about making bread. The process is slow, simple, predictable. Perhaps that is why monastery bread changes so little from one generation to the next. The recipe requires only a few humble ingredients. Flour from the monastery's own wheat. Fresh spring water collected from the mountain. A small portion of yesterday's sourdough starter. A pinch of coarse salt. Nothing more. No sugar. No butter. No rich spices imported from distant lands. Those luxuries belong in the kitchens of kings. Here, simplicity is enough. Brother Thomas divides the dough with a wooden scraper, creating equal portions with practiced precision. Each loaf receives almost the same amount. Fairness matters. Every monk should receive his share. The dough is folded gently, turned, shaped. Its smooth surface grows tighter beneath experienced hands. One novice struggles slightly. His loaf refuses to hold its round shape. Brother Thomas notices. He says nothing. Instead, he places his weathered hands over the young monks and demonstrates the movement once more. Fold. Turn. Tuck. Rotate. The novice tries again. This time, the dough holds together beautifully. Brother Thomas offers a quiet smile before returning to his own work. Not every lesson requires words. Outside the bakery window, the monastery courtyard grows busier. A cart loaded with firewood rolls past, pulled by a patient ox. Gardeners carry baskets toward the vegetable plots. A pair of chickens wander confidently between the stone buildings, searching for insects. Above them, swallows dart through the clear morning sky. The mountain air is warming quickly now. Inside, the shaped loaves rest beneath clean linen cloths for one final rise. While they wait, Brother Thomas kneels beside the great oven. Using a long wooden peel, he gently pushes aside the glowing embers. He studies the color of the stone. No thermometer exists. No clock measures exact baking time. Everything depends upon experience. The baker reads the oven as a shepherd reads the weather. He knows when it is ready simply by looking. A handful of flour tossed onto the stone browns almost instantly. Perfect. One by one, the loaves slide into the glowing chamber. The heavy wooden door closes. Now, there is nothing to do but wait. And waiting, the monks have learned, is never wasted time. It becomes another quiet opportunity for patience. As warm aromas slowly begin filling the bakery once again, the scent drifts through nearby hallways, across the peaceful courtyard, and out toward the mountain paths beyond the monastery walls. Perhaps a passing traveler catches the smell on the breeze and wonders who is baking such wonderful bread in so lonely a place. Perhaps the answer matters less than the comfort the scent brings. In this remote monastery, even a loaf of bread carries the quiet rhythm of a life devoted to patience, simplicity, and care. By the time the morning bread is cooling on wooden racks, another quiet kind of work has already begun. It takes place far from the warmth of the bakery, far from the sounds of the vegetable gardens, far from the clucking chickens and the ringing blacksmith's hammer. At the eastern side of the monastery stands a long stone room filled with sunlight. This is the scriptorium. It is one of the most important rooms in the entire monastery. Without it, countless stories, prayers, histories, and works of learning would simply disappear. Long before printing presses existed, every single book had to be copied by hand. Every letter, every sentence, every page. Imagine copying a book hundreds of pages long, not in a week, or even a month, but over the course of an entire year. That is the patient work waiting for the monks inside this room. The scriptorium is surprisingly quiet. Not silent, but peaceful. The only sounds are the faint scratching of quill pens across parchment, the gentle turning of thick pages, and, every so often, the soft crackle of a beeswax candle. Large windows face the rising sun. Glass is expensive in the medieval world, so each window is made from many small panes held together with strips of lead. The glass is uneven. Tiny bubbles trapped inside it bend the sunlight into shimmering patterns that dance across the stone floor. The monks place their desks near these windows. Natural light is precious. Candles are costly to make. Whenever possible, daylight does the work. Brother Matthew settles onto a sturdy oak stool that has supported him for decades. His desk slopes gently toward him, making it easier to write. On the surface rests today's work, a sheet of smooth parchment, a sharpened goosefeather quill, a small knife, an ink pot, several tiny bowls filled with colorful pigments, a ruler made from polished wood. Everything has its proper place. Nothing unnecessary clutters the table. Before he writes a single word, Brother Matthew quietly closes his eyes. He whispers a short prayer, not asking for speed, but for patience. Because patience is far more valuable here. One careless mistake could ruin an entire page. Sometimes an entire book. He dips the tip of his quill into dark black ink. The ink has been prepared from oak galls gathered in nearby forests. Mixed with iron salts and tree gum, it creates a deep, rich color that can survive for centuries. With slow, steady movements, he writes the first letter. Then another. And another. Each character is almost identical to the one before it. Beautiful. Balanced. Carefully measured. His breathing remains calm. The rhythm becomes almost meditative. Dip the quill. Write. Lift. Pause. Dip again. Hours pass this way. Modern readers can finish a page in moments. For Brother Matthew, producing a single perfect page is enough for an entire morning. Across the room, a younger monk is working on something even more delicate. He is creating an illuminated manuscript. This is where books become works of art. Before him lie tiny shells filled with brilliant colors. Deep blue made from crushed lapis lazuli, a precious stone carried across continents. Bright red from cinnabar. Green from finely ground malachite. Soft yellow from saffron. And, most precious of all, thin sheets of gold leaf. The gold is so delicate that even breathing too heavily might send it floating across the room. Using an incredibly fine brush made from squirrel hair, he paints vines curling around the edge of the page. Tiny flowers bloom between elegant letters. Small birds perch among twisting branches. At the beginning of the chapter, a magnificent golden letter stretches several inches tall, shimmering whenever sunlight touches it. To the monks, beauty honors the words. Even if few people ever see the finished book, it deserves the very best craftsmanship. Hours slip quietly past. No one complains. No one checks the time. There are no clocks hanging on the walls. Only the movement of sunlight slowly crossing the stone floor. Outside the open window, summer insects hum softly. A gentle breeze stirs the curtains. Somewhere in the distance, the monastery bell rings once, announcing the next hour of the day. The scribes pause together. They carefully place small cloths over their unfinished pages to protect them from dust. Quills are cleaned. Ink pots are closed. No page is left uncovered. Parchment is far too valuable to waste. Each sheet begins as animal skin, cleaned, stretched, scraped, and polished through many days of labor. Nothing here is inexpensive. Nothing is disposable. Brother Matthew rubs his tired fingers. Writing all morning has stiffened his joints. He smiles quietly. His hands are slower now than they were 20 years ago. But they are steadier. He knows something the younger monks are only beginning to understand. This book may outlive every person currently living in the monastery. Long after these stone walls have weathered another 100 winters. Long after today's gardens have been replanted countless times. Someone, somewhere, may still open these pages. Perhaps another monk. Perhaps a scholar. Perhaps someone living hundreds of years in the future. someone who has never heard Brother Matthew's name. Yet they will see the careful letters he formed this very morning. His work is anonymous. His reward is not fame. It is simply knowing that knowledge has been preserved. Outside, sunlight now fills the entire monastery courtyard. The smell of fresh bread still lingers in the air. The gardens sparkle beneath the late morning sun. And inside the scriptorium, the quiet work of preserving history continues. One careful letter at a time. As the morning sun climbs higher over the mountains, the monastery slowly empties. The brothers leave the bakery. They leave the scriptorium. They leave the workshops. One by one, many of them make their way through a weathered wooden gate on the southern side of the monastery. Beyond it lies one of the quietest and most beautiful places in the entire monastery, the gardens. From a distance, they may appear simple. Just neat rows of vegetables surrounded by low stone walls. But to the monks, these gardens are far more than farmland. They are classrooms. They are pharmacies. They are kitchens. And, in many ways, they are places of prayer. Every seed planted in the soil reminds the brothers that the smallest acts of patience often produce the greatest rewards. The morning air is pleasantly cool. Tiny drops of dew still cling to broad cabbage leaves, reflecting the sunlight like tiny crystals. The narrow footpaths between the planting beds are carefully swept clean. Nothing grows here by accident. Every patch of earth has been planned months in advance. One section is filled with onions, their green shoots swaying gently in the breeze. Nearby, rows of carrots stretch beneath the soil, their feathery leaves dancing softly whenever the wind passes. Beans climb handmade wooden poles tied together with strips of willow bark. Peas twist around woven trellises. Large pumpkins slowly spread across the edges of the garden, their broad leaves sheltering the moist earth below. The monks understand something every gardener eventually learns. Nature cannot be hurried. You cannot pull on a seedling to make it grow faster. You cannot command the rain to fall. You cannot ask the sun to shine a little longer. Instead, you prepare the soil. You water. You weed. You wait. Brother Stephen kneels beside a row of lettuce. He is nearly 60 years old. His back bends more slowly than it once did, but his hands still move with remarkable care. He gently removes tiny weeds growing between the vegetables. Not by yanking them. Not by tearing at the roots. Instead, he loosens the earth first, then lifts each weed carefully so the nearby plants remain undisturbed. Years of experience have taught him that haste often creates more work later. Across the garden, two young novices carry wooden buckets suspended from a long pole resting across their shoulders. The buckets are filled with fresh spring water collected earlier that morning. Each step must be steady. If they walk too quickly, the water sloshes over the edges. By the time they reach the garden beds, both are smiling despite the effort. The work is tiring, but it is honest work. They pour water slowly around the roots of each vegetable, never onto the leaves. The older monks taught them that healthy roots create healthy plants. Some lessons from gardening seem to apply equally well to life. Near the center of the garden grows something especially important: the herb beds. Unlike the vegetables, these plants are not grown mainly for food. They are grown for healing. The air here carries a wonderful mixture of scents: lavender, sage, rosemary, mint, chamomile, thyme, fennel, lemon balm, calendula. Each herb has its own purpose. Brother Peter, the monastery's herbalist, walks slowly between the raised beds carrying a woven basket. He knows every plant almost as if it were an old friend. He pauses beside a patch of chamomile. Its tiny white flowers are fully open beneath the warm sunlight. Carefully, he harvests only the blossoms. Tomorrow they may become a soothing tea for someone unable to sleep. Nearby grows lavender, whose fragrant purple flowers will later be dried and placed beneath pillows or mixed into oils. Not because the monks believe herbs perform miracles, but because generations of careful observation have shown that many plants truly help. Long before modern pharmacies, monasteries often served as places of healing. Travelers, pilgrims, farmers, children. Anyone who arrived injured or ill might receive simple care prepared from these very gardens. At the far edge of the vegetable plot stands a small orchard. Apple trees spread their branches toward the bright blue sky. Pears hang quietly among glossy leaves. Plum trees promise a rich harvest later in the summer. Bees drift lazily from blossom to blossom. The soft humming fills the warm afternoon air. The monastery keeps several woven beehives nearby. The bees provide honey for special meals. They also produce beeswax, one of the monastery's most valuable resources. Without beeswax, there would be far fewer candles. Without candles, the monks could not copy books after sunset. Even the smallest creatures play their part in monastery life. Nothing exists entirely alone. Everything supports something else. Not far beyond the orchard, the monastery cemetery rests beneath a line of ancient yew trees. Simple wooden crosses mark the resting places of generations of monks. No grand monuments rise here. No statues. No marble. Only names, dates, and quiet grass moving gently in the breeze. Brother Stephen pauses for a moment as he passes. He recognizes many of the names. Some were his teachers. Some his closest friends. Some taught him how to bake bread. Others showed him how to sharpen a quill or tend the herb garden. Now, new generations continue the same work. Life moves gently onward, just as the seasons do. Spring becomes summer. Summer becomes autumn. Autumn becomes winter. Then spring quietly returns once again. The monastery bell rings softly across the gardens. Its familiar tone echoes through the surrounding forest before fading into the distant mountains. The brothers straighten their backs. Some wipe soil from their hands. Others gather baskets now filled with herbs, onions, beans, and fresh greens. The morning's work is complete. Soon they will return to the monastery for the midday meal. The gardens remain behind, peaceful and undisturbed. Butterflies drift above the flowers. The bees continue their endless work. The breeze carries the scent of lavender across the warm stone walls. And beneath the rich earth, countless tiny roots continue growing in silence, patiently preparing tomorrow's harvest. The monastery gardens slowly grow quiet as the brothers carry baskets of herbs, vegetables, and flowers back through the old stone gate. The warmth of late morning settles gently over the mountain. Bees continue drifting from blossom to blossom. A soft breeze ripples through the apple trees. Life in the gardens carries on without anyone watching. Inside the monastery walls, another kind of work is waiting. Not farming. Not baking. Not copying books. Today, we follow Brother Peter into one of the smallest, and perhaps kindest, rooms in the monastery. The infirmary. Unlike a modern hospital, the monastery infirmary is remarkably simple. There are no rows of gleaming instruments. No glass bottles filled with manufactured medicines. No humming machines. Only quiet. The room is bright, with 2 tall windows overlooking the herb garden. Sunlight pours across smooth stone floors, warming the cool air. Along one wall stand sturdy wooden shelves. They are lined with dozens of clay jars, each carefully labeled in neat Latin script. Inside are dried herbs gathered throughout the year. Chamomile for calming restless nights. Peppermint for unsettled stomachs. Sage for sore throats. Lavender for gentle relaxation. Rosemary, thyme, yarrow, fennel, and many others. Each jar represents months of careful work, planting, tending, harvesting, drying, and storing. Nothing has been wasted. Brother Peter moves quietly among the shelves. His gray beard reaches almost to his chest, and his hands bear the faint green stains of countless herbs. He has spent more than 30 years learning the plants that grow in these mountains. His knowledge did not come from a university. It came from observation. From old handwritten manuscripts. From older monks who patiently passed their wisdom to the next generation. Each season taught another lesson. Which flowers bloom first after winter? Which roots are strongest in autumn? Which leaves lose their fragrance if picked too late in the day? The mountains themselves have become his teachers. He gently removes a small bundle of dried chamomile flowers from a shelf. Their sweet, apple-like fragrance fills the room. Nearby, a kettle hangs above a modest fire. Fresh spring water begins to warm. Not boil. Just enough to prepare a comforting tea. A quiet knock echoes through the doorway. Brother Peter looks up with a welcoming smile. Standing outside is a young novice. He bows respectfully. "Brother Peter," he says softly, "one of the shepherds from the valley has arrived." Moments later, an elderly shepherd enters the infirmary. His wool cloak is dusty from the mountain paths. One boot is damp from crossing a shallow stream. His face is weathered by decades beneath the sun. He removes his cap politely. "I slipped while climbing the hillside," he explains. "My ankle is painful." Brother Peter nods calmly. There is no panic. No rushing. He guides the shepherd toward a simple wooden chair. Carefully, he removes the man's boot. The ankle is swollen but not badly injured. Brother Peter gently presses around the joint. The shepherd winces. "Not broken," Brother Peter says reassuringly. "Only strained." The shepherd lets out a relieved breath. Brother Peter prepares a cool herbal compress. Fresh camphor leaves, known by many medieval healers for their soothing properties, are gently crushed with a smooth stone pestle. He mixes them with clean cloth soaked in cool spring water. The compress is wrapped carefully around the swollen ankle. Not too tightly. Just enough to provide support. Then he offers the shepherd a warm cup of chamomile tea. Steam curls lazily upward. The old man wraps both hands around the wooden cup, grateful for its warmth. Outside the window, birds continue singing as though nothing unusual has happened. Life rarely pauses for injury. The monastery simply meets each need as it comes. While the shepherd rests, Brother Peter prepares honey from the monastery's own beehives. Honey is precious. Not only because it sweetens food. Medieval people also valued it for helping protect small cuts from dirt and infection. He spreads a thin layer over a shallow scrape on the shepherd's hand before covering it with clean linen. The bandage is simple. The care is gentle. Sometimes kindness itself becomes part of the medicine. Nearby, shelves hold bundles of dried lavender hanging upside down from the ceiling beams. Small sacks of mint fill the room with refreshing fragrance. Rosemary dries beside bunches of sage. Sunlight warms the herbs until the entire infirmary smells like a peaceful summer garden. Brother Peter often receives visitors who are not seriously ill at all. Some are simply exhausted after long journeys. Pilgrims traveling to distant shrines arrive with blistered feet. Merchants ask for clean water and a quiet place to rest. Children from nearby villages come with scraped knees or splinters. Mothers seek advice when fevers spread through their homes. The monastery cannot cure every illness. No one here pretends otherwise. But they offer what they can. Clean water. Simple food. Rest. Gentle care. And hope. In an age when medical knowledge remains limited, these small acts often make a meaningful difference. The elderly shepherd finishes his tea. His ankle already feels slightly better after resting. Brother Peter smiles. The mountain will still be there tomorrow, he says quietly. There is no need to hurry. The shepherd laughs softly. You're right, brother. He promises to avoid steep hills for a few days. Before leaving, he places a small wheel of goat cheese on the wooden table. Payment. Not demanded. Simply offered in gratitude. The monastery rarely refuses such gifts. Cheese today may become supper tomorrow. Everything has value. Everything is shared. As the shepherd slowly makes his way back down the mountain path, Brother Peter opens the windows a little wider. Fresh air drifts through the infirmary. The scent of lavender mixes with pine trees carried by the breeze. The clay jars remain neatly arranged. The herbs wait patiently for whoever may need them next. Perhaps another traveler. Perhaps a tired monk. Perhaps no one today at all. Either way, the room stands ready. Quiet. Peaceful. Filled not with miracles, but with careful hands, patient hearts, and the gentle belief that healing often begins with compassion. As the sun reaches its highest point, long shadows disappear from the monastery courtyard. The cool air of morning has softened into a pleasant afternoon warmth. A gentle breeze carries the scent of fresh bread from the bakery and lavender from the herb garden. Most of the monks have returned to their daily work. Some continue copying manuscripts. Others repair fences along the hillside. A few gather vegetables for the midday meal. Life flows quietly onward, following the same peaceful rhythm it has for generations. Yet there is one place where every day brings a small touch of uncertainty. The monastery gate. Unlike the chapel or the gardens, the gate connects two very different worlds. Inside lies silence, order, and routine. Outside stretches an unpredictable landscape of forests, mountain paths, distant villages, and travelers whose stories are unknown. No one knows who might arrive today. Perhaps no one at all. Or perhaps someone whose journey has been long and difficult. Brother Andrew has been entrusted with caring for the gatehouse. It is not the most celebrated responsibility within the monastery. There are no beautiful manuscripts to illuminate. No sermons to deliver. No impressive ceremonies. Yet the abbot often reminds the younger monks that hospitality is one of the monastery's greatest duties. Every stranger should be welcomed with kindness. Because no one truly knows who stands before the gate. Brother Andrew has served here for nearly 15 years. His face carries gentle lines earned more from smiling than from worry. He keeps a small wooden stool beneath the shade of the stone archway. Beside him rests a clay pitcher filled with cool spring water. A basket holds several fresh loaves baked earlier that morning. Nearby hangs a bronze handbell. Not for emergencies. Only to quietly announce that visitors have arrived. Most afternoons pass peacefully. He enjoys watching butterflies drift among the wildflowers growing outside the wall. Sometimes a red squirrel pauses on the old oak tree nearby before disappearing into the forest. Above, swallows dart gracefully through the clear blue sky. The mountains seem almost timeless. Not long after midday, movement appears along the winding path below. 3 tiny figures slowly emerge from the forest. At first they are little more than silhouettes against the bright sunlight. As they climb closer, Brother Andrew can see them more clearly. 2 pilgrims. And 1 elderly merchant leading a tired gray mule. Their clothes are dusty from many days on the road. Wide-brimmed hats shield them from the afternoon sun. Leather boots are worn thin from countless miles of walking. The mule carries 2 heavy baskets tied carefully across its back. Its ears droop with fatigue. The travelers stop briefly outside the monastery gate. Not because they fear entering. Simply because climbing the mountain has left them breathless. Brother Andrew smiles warmly. He steps forward before anyone has the chance to knock. "Welcome," he says softly. "You must be tired." The oldest pilgrim returns the smile. "We have walked since sunrise." Without asking for payment, Brother Andrew offers each visitor a wooden cup of cool spring water. The travelers drink slowly. The water tastes wonderfully fresh after hours beneath the summer sun. One pilgrim closes his eyes for a moment. "It tastes sweeter than any wine," he says with a quiet laugh. Brother Andrew smiles. Mountain springs have their own blessings. Next, he breaks one of the warm loaves into generous pieces. Fresh bread. A small wheel of goat cheese. Several ripe apples gathered from the monastery orchard. Nothing extravagant. Yet to hungry travelers, it feels like a feast. The mule receives its own welcome. Brother Andrew gently loosens the straps holding the baskets and leads the patient animal toward a shaded trough filled with fresh water. The mule drinks gratefully. Its tail flicks lazily at a curious fly. Even the animals find rest within the monastery walls. Once everyone has eaten, the travelers share a little of their journey. One pilgrim is traveling toward a distant cathedral hundreds of miles away. He has already crossed rivers, forests, and busy market towns. The younger pilgrim hopes to visit several monasteries before winter arrives. The merchant speaks of villages where wheat has grown especially well this year. He also mentions rumors of a new stone bridge being built farther south, one that may make future journeys safer. Brother Andrew listens more than he speaks. He enjoys hearing news from beyond the mountains. Life inside the monastery changes slowly. The outside world moves much faster. Kings rise and fall. Roads improve. Markets grow. Wars begin. Harvests fail. Children are born. Years pass. Yet the monastery remains much the same. Its purpose is not to chase change. It is to offer peace whenever change becomes overwhelming. One of the pilgrims notices the peaceful silence of the courtyard. "There is something different about this place," he says. Brother Andrew nods thoughtfully. "We try to leave enough quiet for people to hear their own thoughts." The pilgrim smiles. I think I had forgotten what silence sounds like. For several minutes, no one speaks. No one feels the need. A breeze stirs the branches of the old oak tree beside the gate. The monastery bell rings softly in the distance. A pair of swallows circle above the stone rooftops. Some moments are complete exactly as they are. As afternoon slowly begins to drift toward evening, Brother Andrew shows the travelers to the monastery guest house. The rooms are modest. Each contains a straw mattress, a wool blanket, a wooden stool, a clay pitcher of fresh water, a small candle waiting to be lit after sunset. Luxury is absent. Comfort is present. For weary travelers, that is enough. The merchant gently pats his faithful mule before leading it toward the stable. The pilgrims quietly unpack their small satchels. Tomorrow, they will continue their journey. But tonight, they will sleep safely beneath the monastery's ancient roof. As Brother Andrew returns to the gatehouse, he pauses beneath the weathered stone arch. The mountain path stretches away into the golden afternoon light. For now, it is empty once again. Soon another traveler may appear. Or perhaps no one will come until tomorrow. Either way, the gate will remain open to those who arrive in peace. Because in this remote monastery, every guest is welcomed not as an interruption, but as part of the day's quiet rhythm. And beneath the endless sky, surrounded by forests and mountains, kindness continues to travel farther than any road. The afternoon bell rings slowly across the monastery grounds. Its deep bronze voice rolls over the gardens, through the orchard, across the sheep pasture, and into the surrounding forest. One by one, the brothers set aside their work. Brother Thomas brushes the last flour from his hands in the bakery. Brother Matthew carefully places a strip of linen over his unfinished manuscript in the scriptorium. Brother Peter washes the soil from his fingers after gathering fresh herbs. The gardeners lean their wooden hoes against the stone wall. Even the blacksmith allows the final echo of his hammer to fade before placing it gently on the anvil. For a little while, every task comes to rest. The monastery breathes as one. The brothers walk quietly toward the refectory, their footsteps familiar upon the smooth stone paths. The guest pilgrims, now refreshed after their long journey, are invited to join the meal. Hospitality is not reserved for feast days. Sharing food with strangers is simply another part of the monastery's daily rhythm. Sunlight streams through the high windows of the dining hall, painting long rectangles of gold across the wooden tables. The room smells wonderfully comforting. Fresh bread still carries warmth from the morning bake. A large iron pot of thick vegetable stew rests above glowing coals in the kitchen beyond. Steam rises gently from its surface. The stew is simple. Cabbages harvested only hours ago. Onions pulled from the garden. Leeks. Carrots. Beans. A handful of barley to make it hearty. Fresh herbs from Brother Peter's garden add quiet layers of flavor. Nothing expensive. nothing wasted. Yet the meal is nourishing after a morning of steady work. Alongside the stew are wooden bowls of soft goat's cheese, slices of dark rye bread, crisp apples from the orchard, and small pitchers of cool spring water. Today is not a fasting day, so each brother also receives a small portion of baked river trout caught earlier that morning in a nearby stream. The fish is seasoned only with salt and fresh thyme. Its simplicity reflects the monastery itself. Before anyone eats, the abbot rises. The room falls perfectly still. He bows his head. The brothers follow. His prayer is short. He gives thanks not only for the food but also for the hands that prepared it, for the rain that nourished the fields, for the sunlight that ripened the grain, for the bees that pollinated the orchard, for the shepherd whose sheep provided wool, for the travelers safely resting behind the monastery walls. When the prayer ends, everyone quietly takes their seats. Unlike breakfast, today's meal allows only one voice to be heard. At the far end of the hall, a young monk climbs onto a small wooden platform. He opens a beautifully handwritten manuscript. Today's reading tells the story of an early monk who spent decades living in peaceful solitude beside a river, finding joy in ordinary work and quiet reflection. His calm voice fills the hall. No one interrupts. The words drift gently above the soft sounds of spoons against wooden bowls. The pilgrims quickly notice something unusual. No one rushes. No one reaches eagerly for the best pieces of bread. Every movement is measured. Someone who finishes first simply folds his hands and waits. Brother Andrew quietly passes another basket of bread toward the guests before serving himself. The pilgrims exchange grateful smiles. One of them whispers, almost apologetically, "I've never eaten so slowly." Brother Andrew smiles kindly. You may discover that food tastes different when time isn't chasing you. The pilgrim nods. He tears another small piece of bread. He notices the crisp crust, the soft center, the warmth that still lingers from the oven. Perhaps Brother Andrew is right. Near the center of the hall sits Brother Gregory. He is one of the oldest monks in the monastery. His hearing has begun to fade. His beard reaches nearly to his waist. His hands tremble slightly whenever he lifts his wooden spoon. Years ago, he worked tirelessly in the fields. Now, younger brothers quietly help him carry heavy baskets. He never asks. They simply notice. This quiet care is woven naturally into monastery life. No announcements. No praise. Only kindness offered before it is requested. When Brother Gregory accidentally drops a small piece of bread onto the table, the novice beside him gently places it back on his wooden plate without a word. The older monk smiles with grateful eyes. Sometimes compassion speaks most clearly in silence. Outside the open windows, the monastery continues its peaceful conversation with nature. A pair of swallows dart beneath the roofline, feeding their hungry chicks. The old monastery cat stretches lazily in a patch of warm sunlight before curling into another afternoon nap. Beyond the walls, sheep graze quietly on the hillside. Tiny bells hanging from their necks produce soft, irregular chimes carried by the breeze. The vegetable garden shimmers beneath the afternoon sun. Butterflies drift above blooming lavender. The bees remain busy, never seeming to tire. The mountains stand quietly beyond it all, ancient and unmoving. The reading slowly comes to an end. The young monk carefully closes the manuscript. For a few moments, the hall remains completely silent. No one feels the need to fill the quiet. The brothers simply finish the last spoonfuls of stew. Wooden bowls are stacked neatly. Leftover bread is wrapped carefully in linen for tomorrow. Vegetable scraps will feed the chickens. Nothing is discarded carelessly. Every gift deserves respect. The abbot rises once more. He offers a final prayer of gratitude. The monks bow their heads. Then, as quietly as they entered, they leave the refectory and return to the peaceful rhythm of the afternoon. The guests linger for a moment, looking around the now empty hall. One pilgrim smiles to himself. He cannot remember the last time a meal left him feeling not only full, but deeply peaceful. Perhaps it was not the bread, or the stew, or the fresh mountain water. Perhaps it was the gift of eating without hurry. In this remote monastery, even the simplest meal becomes a quiet reminder that enough can truly be enough. The midday meal has ended. The wooden bowls have been washed and placed upside down on sturdy oak shelves to dry. The last crumbs of bread have been gathered carefully for the chickens. The refectory falls quiet once again. Outside, the afternoon sun hangs high above the mountains. Warm light spills across the monastery courtyard, where smooth stone paths wind between flower beds, herb gardens, and weathered buildings that have stood for centuries. A gentle breeze stirs the monastery banner above the chapel roof. Somewhere nearby, a bee lands on a blooming lavender flower. Life continues at its unhurried pace. But before the brothers return to their work, one monk turns toward the tallest building in the monastery. The bell tower. From almost anywhere on the mountain, its stone silhouette can be seen rising above the rooftops. It is not the tallest tower in the kingdom, nor the grandest. Yet for everyone living here, it is the heart that quietly keeps the monastery alive. In the modern world, time follows us everywhere. A watch on the wrist, a clock on the wall, a phone in a pocket. Minutes are measured precisely. Seconds seem precious. Appointments fill calendars. Deadlines hurry every decision. But in the medieval monastery, time feels entirely different. There are no ticking clocks, no alarm tones, no digital displays glowing in the darkness. Instead, the day is guided by bells. The bell announces prayer. It announces work. It announces meals. It announces rest. The brothers do not ask, "What time is it?" Instead, they ask, "What is this hour asking of me?" It is a subtle difference. Yet it changes everything. Brother Martin is responsible for the bells. Few visitors ever notice him. His work is quiet, mostly solitary, and absolutely dependable. He has climbed the tower stairs almost every day for the past 18 years. The staircase twists tightly upward inside thick stone walls. Its narrow steps have become smooth beneath countless feet. Tiny arrow-shaped windows allow thin beams of sunlight to cut across the dusty air. As Brother Martin climbs, he places one steady hand against the cool stone wall. The tower smells faintly of old timber, iron, and fresh mountain air. Higher and higher, until he reaches the bell chamber. There, suspended from enormous oak beams, hangs the monastery's great bronze bell. It is larger than a man. Its surface bears simple carvings, a cross, a few lines of Latin, and the year it was cast more than a century ago. Rain has darkened the bronze over time. Small patches of green patina cling to its lower edge. Yet it remains beautiful, strong, faithful. Brother Martin reaches out and rests his hand against the cool metal. The bell feels almost alive. It has spoken to generations of monks. Some who first heard its voice as young novices now rest beneath the monastery cemetery's quiet grass. Others have traveled far beyond these mountains. The bell remembers them all. Its voice has marked births, deaths, harvests, storms, snowfalls, ordinary Tuesdays, and joyful feast days, without ever moving from its place. Brother Martin checks the thick hemp rope attached to the bell's great wooden wheel. He inspects it carefully. A frayed rope could become dangerous. Everything must be maintained. Even the smallest crack ignored today might become tomorrow's disaster. Maintenance, like prayer, rewards consistency. The afternoon prayer approaches. Brother Martin steps into position. He grips the heavy rope firmly. For a brief moment, the tower is perfectly still. Even the pigeons nesting beneath the roof seem to pause. Then, he pulls. Slowly. The enormous bell begins to move. At first, only slightly. The great bronze body sways almost lazily. Then farther. Higher. The wooden supports creak softly. The rope grows taut. The clapper inside swings. And suddenly, bang! A single deep note fills the tower. The vibration travels through the wooden beams, down the stone walls, and out across the mountain. Another pull. Bang! The sound rolls over forests of pine. Across quiet valleys. Beyond distant farms where shepherds pause for a moment and glance toward the monastery. Birds briefly lift from nearby rooftops before settling once again. The sound does not shout. It simply arrives. Steady. calm, certain. Each note lingers in the air long after the bell itself has fallen silent. Down below, the brothers hear the familiar call. No one rushes. There is no panic. No sense of being late. The bell is not scolding anyone. It is simply inviting them. Brother Matthew gently closes his manuscript. Brother Thomas brushes flour from his apron. Brother Peter places his basket of herbs upon a wooden shelf. The gardeners lean their tools neatly against the wall. Even the monastery cat opens one sleepy eye at the sound before deciding that another nap is still an excellent idea. The guests also hear the bell. One pilgrim steps into the courtyard and looks up toward the tower. "I've heard church bells before," he says quietly to Brother Andrew. "But somehow this one sounds different." Brother Andrew smiles. Perhaps because there is nothing else competing with it. The pilgrim listens as the final echo disappears into the mountains. He realizes the monk is right. No wagons rumble past. No shouting crowds fill the streets. No marketplace hums beyond the walls. Only wind, birdsong, and silence. In that silence, the bell seems far larger than its bronze frame. As the afternoon light begins its slow journey toward evening, Brother Martin coils the rope neatly beside the wall. His work is finished, for now. The next bell will come in its proper hour. Not sooner. Not later. Exactly when it is needed. He pauses at the tower window before beginning the long descent. From here, the entire monastery stretches below like a tiny stone village. The gardens glow green beneath the sun. The orchard sways gently in the breeze. Thin wisps of smoke rise from the bakery chimney. The guest house rests quietly beneath an ancient oak. Beyond the walls, endless forests cover the mountains like a great green sea. It is a peaceful sight. One worth remembering. Then, with slow and steady steps, Brother Martin begins walking back down the spiral staircase. The bell has spoken. The monastery has listened. And another quiet hour begins. The echoes of the great bell slowly fade into the surrounding mountains. For a few peaceful moments, the monastery seems to pause. Then, almost imperceptibly, life begins to move once more. The brothers return to their work, not with hurried footsteps, but with the calm certainty that comes from following a familiar rhythm. The afternoon sun has softened. Golden light spills across the stone courtyard, warming the weathered walls that have stood through centuries of changing seasons. The air carries a mixture of comforting scents. Fresh-cut pine, warm beeswax, dry hay from the stable, wood smoke drifting lazily from the bakery chimney. And somewhere nearby, the unmistakable scent of freshly worked oak. It leads us toward another important corner of monastery life. The workshop. Unlike the peaceful silence of the chapel or the scriptorium, the workshop has its own quiet music. The gentle rasp of a hand plane smoothing rough timber. The rhythmic tap, tap, tap of a wooden mallet striking a chisel. The slow turning of a foot-powered grinding wheel. Occasionally, from the neighboring forge, the clear ringing of iron meeting iron. None of these sounds are loud. None feel hurried. Each belongs naturally to the day's rhythm. Here, practical skill becomes another form of devotion. Nothing is made simply to impress. Everything has a purpose. A sturdy chair that may last 50 years. A wooden spoon carved for the kitchen. A new handle for a worn farming tool. A stronger gate hinge before winter storms arrive. Beauty comes not from decoration, but from usefulness. Brother Lucas, the monastery carpenter, has worked with wood for nearly 30 years. His beard is dusted with tiny curls of pale sawdust. The sleeves of his simple brown robe are rolled neatly above his elbows. His hands are broad, strong, and marked by countless small cuts collected over decades of careful work. He stands beside a thick oak beam resting across two sturdy wooden trestles. Today, he is building a new bench for the cloister garden. The old one finally cracked after many harsh winters. Rather than repairing it again, the brothers decided it had faithfully served its purpose. Even useful things eventually reach the end of their lives. Brother Lucas runs his hand slowly along the grain of the timber. Every tree tells its own story. Some wood bends easily. Some resists. Some carries hidden knots that reveal themselves only after the first cut. A good carpenter learns not to fight the wood. Instead, he works with it. The tree itself suggests the strongest shape. Nearby, a young novice watches carefully. This is his first season learning carpentry. Brother Lucas hands him a simple wooden plane. "Not too much pressure," he says softly. "Let the blade do the work." The novice nods. His first pass removes only a thin shaving. A pale ribbon of wood curls gently onto the floor. Then another. And another. Soon, long fragrant spirals surround his feet like fallen autumn leaves. He smiles quietly. There is something deeply satisfying about watching rough timber become smooth beneath patient hands. No machine rushes the process. Only steady effort. Brother Lucas nods with approval. "You are shaping more than wood," he says. "You are shaping patience." The novice reflects on those words as he continues working. Perhaps the older monk is right. Some lessons hide inside ordinary tasks. Across the courtyard, the monastery blacksmith is already busy. Brother Gregory, not the elderly monk from the dining hall, but a younger brother who shares the same name, stands before a small stone forge. Unlike the noisy blacksmith shops found in bustling medieval towns, this forge serves only the monastery's daily needs. A pair of leather bellows rests beside the glowing fire. With each slow push, fresh air feeds the coals. Orange flames brighten. The iron resting within begins to glow a deep cherry red. Brother Gregory lifts it carefully using long iron tongs. The heated metal rests upon a weathered anvil polished smooth by generations of hammer blows. He raises his hammer. Clang. The sound rings clearly across the courtyard. Not harsh. Not startling. Simply firm. Certain. He turns the iron. Another strike. Clang. Again. Each blow changes the shape only slightly. There are no dramatic transformations. Only small improvements repeated patiently. A bent nail becomes straight. A dull hoe receives a sharper edge. A loose hinge becomes strong once more. In monastery life, repair is often wiser than replacement. Nothing useful is discarded without good reason. On a nearby workbench rests a collection of familiar tools. Hand-forged chisels. Wooden mallets. Iron awls. Small carving knives. Each handle has been polished smooth by years of use. Some tools are older than the monks who now hold them. A hammer crafted by one generation continues serving the next. The brothers care for their tools almost as carefully as they care for their books. After each task, blades are cleaned. Wooden handles are rubbed with linseed oil. Rust is removed before it spreads. Good maintenance saves many hours of future work. The monastery owns relatively few possessions. That makes caring for each one even more important. Outside the workshop, a wheelbarrow waits beside neatly stacked planks of freshly cut ash and oak. A gentle breeze stirs the sawdust scattered across the ground. Sunlight filters through nearby chestnut trees, casting dancing shadows over the courtyard. A robin lands briefly atop the unfinished garden bench before fluttering away again. The brothers pause for a moment to stretch their backs. No one complains about tired muscles. Physical work is simply part of the day. Strong hands build useful things. Useful things help the entire community. In that way, every bench, every shovel, every repaired door, every sharpened plow, becomes another quiet act of service. As the afternoon slowly begins leaning toward evening, Brother Lucas brushes the last curls of wood from the nearly finished bench. He steps back to admire it. No fancy carvings. No polished decorations. Only clean lines. Solid joints. Carefully fitted pieces that will withstand many winters to come. The novice runs his fingers gently along the smooth surface. It feels warm beneath the afternoon sun. Perhaps, years from now, another young monk will sit here after tending the gardens. Perhaps an elderly traveler will rest tired legs before continuing down the mountain path. Perhaps children from a nearby village will wait here while their parents speak with the monks. Brother Lucas smiles. The finest craftsman rarely knows who will use his work. He simply builds it well. Because someone, someday, will quietly depend upon it. The workshop grows still as the tools are returned to their proper places. The forge cools. The scent of warm wood lingers in the air. And across the monastery, another peaceful afternoon draws gently toward evening. The afternoon gradually begins to fade. The bright sunlight that filled the monastery courtyard only a few hours ago softens into a warm golden glow. Long shadows stretch across the cobblestones. The stone walls, gray and cool in the morning, now seem almost honey-colored beneath the gentle light of the descending sun. The mountain air changes as well. The warmth of the day slowly gives way to a pleasant coolness. A breeze drifts down from the higher peaks, carrying the clean scent of pine forests and wildflowers growing along the rocky slopes. The swallows that spent the afternoon chasing insects now circle lower over the rooftops. In the distance, the sheep begin making their slow journey back toward their stone enclosure. Another ordinary day is quietly coming to an end. Throughout the monastery, the brothers finish the final tasks of the afternoon. Brother Thomas slides the last loaves of bread onto wooden shelves where they will cool overnight. He gently brushes flour from his apron before hanging it on a wooden peg. The bakery grows still. Only the comforting smell of fresh bread remains. In the scriptorium, Brother Matthew carefully places a strip of soft linen over the page he has spent the entire day copying. The ink has dried perfectly. Tomorrow, he will continue exactly where he stopped. There is no urgency. Great books are written one careful page at a time. Brother Peter returns the remaining herbs to their shelves inside the infirmary. Bundles of lavender, rosemary, and chamomile sway gently as the evening breeze slips through the open window. He closes the shutters halfway, allowing only the golden light of sunset to fill the room. Outside, the gardeners place their wooden tools neatly inside a small shed. Buckets are turned upside down. Wheelbarrows rest beneath the shelter of the orchard trees. Nothing is left carelessly scattered. Preparing for tomorrow begins before today has fully ended. Then, the bell rings. Not loudly. Not urgently. Its familiar bronze voice spreads slowly across the mountain. This is the call to Vespers, the evening prayer. One by one, the brothers leave their work behind. The carpenter sets down his plane. The blacksmith lets the final glow fade from the forge. The shepherd closes the gate to the sheepfold. The guests quietly rise from the bench where they have been resting beneath the ancient oak tree. No one rushes. The work can wait. Even the most important task pauses for prayer. The monastery follows a rhythm older than memory itself. The chapel feels different now than it did before dawn. Morning brought cool darkness and flickering candles. Evening brings warm amber light pouring through stained glass windows. The colors dance across the stone floor. Ruby red, deep sapphire blue, golden yellow. Tiny patches of colored light slowly drift as the sun continues its descent. The brothers take their places inside the carved wooden choir stalls. No one speaks. The silence feels familiar now. Comfortable. Almost like greeting an old friend. The abbot opens the great prayer book. Its pages catch the last rays of sunlight before the room begins growing dim. Once again, the first note rises. Softly. Almost like a whisper carried on the evening breeze. Another voice joins. Then another. Soon the chapel fills with gentle chanting. The melodies are slow and steady. Each phrase lingers among the stone arches before fading into peaceful silence. Outside, a traveler passing through the valley might hear only faint echoes drifting across the hills. He may never know where the beautiful voices originate. He simply pauses for a moment. Listens. Then quietly continues on his journey. Brother Matthew closes his eyes as he sings. He has sung these same evening prayers thousands of times. Yet they never feel repetitive. Instead, each day adds another layer to a life built patiently, one quiet hour after another. Beside him stands the youngest novice. Only months ago, the chants felt unfamiliar. Now they flow naturally from memory. He notices something he had never appreciated before. The voices are not trying to stand out. No one sings louder than the others. No one seeks attention. Together they create something more beautiful than any single voice could achieve alone. Perhaps community works the same way. As the prayers continue, the sun finally slips behind the distant mountains. The brilliant colors inside the chapel slowly fade. The stained glass windows darken. One by one, the monks light beeswax candles placed along the walls. Their warm flames flicker gently. The chapel becomes peaceful once more, glowing softly in the gathering twilight. Outside, the first evening star appears above the western sky. The air grows cooler. Crickets begin their quiet song among the grasses. An owl calls from somewhere deep within the forest. The monastery itself seems to breathe more slowly. The final hymn begins. Its melody is gentle enough to calm even the busiest mind. The notes rise slowly toward the wooden ceiling before floating back down again like falling leaves. When the last word has been sung, no one moves. Not immediately. Silence settles over the chapel. It is not an empty silence. It is full of gratitude, full of peace, full of the quiet satisfaction that comes from an honest day's work completed without haste. At last, the abbot closes the great prayer book. The sound echoes softly through the chapel. The brothers bow their heads. The candles continue flickering. Outside, darkness slowly spreads across the mountain. The monastery has entered its evening. Another day has nearly passed. Another ordinary day. And perhaps that is exactly what makes it so beautiful. The final notes of Vespers fade gently into the ancient stone walls. For several quiet moments, no one rises. The chapel remains still, illuminated only by the warm glow of dozens of beeswax candles. Outside, evening settles over the mountains with remarkable patience. The western sky burns briefly with shades of amber, rose, and deep violet before surrendering to the approaching blue of night. The first stars begin to appear. One. Then another. Then dozens. The air cools quickly at this elevation. A gentle breeze carries the scent of pine needles, damp earth, and the faint sweetness of lavender from the monastery gardens. Far below in the valley, tiny lights begin to appear in scattered farmhouses. Families are gathering around their own evening fires. Children are finishing their last chores. Dogs bark faintly in the distance before settling for the night. The monastery watches over the valley like a quiet guardian, its stone walls glowing softly beneath the fading sky. The brothers leave the chapel in silence. Their sandals whisper across the smooth flagstones. Candles carried by two novices cast dancing shadows along the narrow corridors. The flickering light reveals familiar details that often go unnoticed during the day. Tiny marks left by medieval stonemasons centuries ago. The worn edges of staircases climbed by countless feet. A faded fresco of a saint whose colors have softened with time. The monastery changes so slowly that each generation barely notices. Yet every century leaves a gentle fingerprint behind. The corridor opens into the refectory. Earlier today, sunlight filled the room. Now, only candlelight remains. Small flames rest upon sturdy iron holders spaced evenly along the long wooden tables. Their glow is warm and comforting. Not bright enough to chase every shadow away. Only enough to remind everyone that darkness has its own quiet beauty. Supper is even simpler than the midday meal. A large earthenware pot contains thick barley porridge, slow-cooked until creamy and warm. Fresh herbs from the monastery garden add gentle fragrance. Beside it are slices of rye bread baked that very morning. Small portions of soft goat's cheese. A handful of roasted chestnuts gathered from nearby forests. Stewed apples, lightly sweetened with a touch of monastery honey harvested earlier in the season. For most monks, this is enough. A full stomach is welcome. An excessive one is unnecessary. The guest pilgrims are invited to sit among the brothers once again. Though they have spent only a single day here, the peaceful rhythm of monastery life already feels strangely familiar. One of the pilgrims notices how different hunger feels after a day filled with meaningful work. The simple food tastes richer. The bread seems sweeter. Even the cool spring water feels satisfying. Perhaps appetite improves not only with effort, but with gratitude. As always, a single monk reads aloud while the others eat. Tonight's reading tells the story of an elderly hermit who spent decades living quietly in a forest, finding wisdom not through great adventures but through paying careful attention to ordinary days. The brothers listen while slowly eating their meal. The young novice reflects upon the story. Only months ago, he imagined that becoming a monk meant witnessing extraordinary miracles. Instead, he has discovered something unexpected. Most days are wonderfully ordinary. The miracle, perhaps, lies in learning to notice them. The warm bowl in his hands. The crackling candle nearby. The smell of fresh bread. The quiet companionship of those around him. These simple gifts become easier to see when life slows down. Near the end of the meal, Brother Andrew quietly notices that one of the elderly pilgrims has eaten very little. Without saying anything, he tears his own piece of bread in half and places it gently onto the visitor's wooden plate. The pilgrim looks surprised, then deeply grateful. Neither man speaks. No thanks are required. Generosity often arrives most gracefully when it asks for no recognition. At another table, Brother Gregory carefully gathers the smallest crumbs remaining on the wooden surface. They will feed the chickens in the morning. Nothing given by the earth is treated carelessly. Even a single crumb has value. Outside, the monastery cat slips silently beneath one of the benches, hopeful that someone might accidentally drop a morsel of cheese. A novice smiles as he notices the patient little hunter waiting in the shadows. When the final page of the evening reading is finished, the monk gently closes the manuscript. The soft sound echoes briefly through the dining hall. Everyone pauses. The abbot offers one last prayer of thanksgiving. Not only for the food, but for the day itself. For hands that remain strong enough to work. For guests who arrived safely. For gardens that continue to grow. For peaceful weather. For quiet hearts. The brothers bow their heads. The pilgrims do the same. Outside, darkness has now fully embraced the mountain. Only the stars and a slender crescent moon remain above the monastery. One by one, the candles are gently extinguished. A novice uses a small brass snuffer, lowering it carefully over each flame. Tiny threads of fragrant smoke curl upward before disappearing into the darkness. The dining hall grows dim. Only lanterns carried by a few brothers remain. Soon the monastery will enter what many consider its most peaceful hour. The great silence. From this moment until morning, unnecessary conversation will cease. Not because speech is unwelcome, but because quiet allows the mind to rest. Just as fields need winter, and forests need night, the human soul also benefits from silence. The brothers step softly into the cool evening air. Above them, the Milky Way stretches brilliantly across the sky. Without the glow of cities, the heavens appear almost unimaginably vast. The monastery settles gently into the embrace of night. Another ordinary day has almost come to its peaceful end. And tomorrow, the bell will ring once more, the final candle in the refectory has been gently extinguished. A thin ribbon of fragrant smoke rises for a moment before disappearing into the darkness above. The brothers leave the dining hall one by one, carrying only small lanterns whose warm light dances softly across the ancient stone corridors. No one speaks. There is no need. The great silence has begun. For many monasteries across medieval Europe, This was one of the most cherished traditions of the day. From the end of supper until after the first prayers of the following morning, unnecessary conversation simply stopped. Not because words were considered bad, but because silence was considered valuable. After a full day of working, praying, studying, and welcoming travelers, the mind deserved a chance to become quiet again. Outside, the mountain has surrendered completely to the night. The last traces of orange have vanished beyond the western peaks. Above the monastery, the sky has become an ocean of stars. Without cities or electric lights, the heavens appear astonishingly bright. The Milky Way stretches from one horizon to the other like a pale river flowing through the darkness. It feels close enough to touch. Brother Andrew walks slowly across the courtyard. His lantern swings gently beside him. Each step echoes softly against the worn cobblestones. The old stone well stands silent in the center of the courtyard. Nearby, the herb garden rests beneath silver moonlight. The lavender glows softly. Tiny white flowers seem almost luminous beneath the stars. The evening breeze carries their delicate fragrance through the cool mountain air. Somewhere beyond the monastery walls, an owl calls. A second owl answers from deeper within the forest. Then, stillness. It is a kind of silence that is almost impossible to experience in the modern world. No engines. No distant traffic. No humming electricity. Only nature breathing quietly through the night. Brother Andrew pauses beside the monastery gate. Earlier today, weary travelers arrived here seeking rest. Now the heavy oak doors are closed for the night. Iron hinges creak softly as he checks the wooden crossbar one final time. Everything is secure. Tomorrow morning, the gates will open once again. But tonight, the mountain belongs to sleep. Inside the guest house, the two pilgrims prepare for bed. The older traveler carefully removes his dusty boots. His feet ache pleasantly after the long journey. He folds his wool cloak and places it neatly at the foot of the straw mattress. The room contains almost nothing. A simple wooden bed. A rough wool blanket. A clay water jug. A tiny beeswax candle. A wooden cross carved by one of the monastery brothers many years ago. Yet after weeks of sleeping outdoors or in crowded roadside inns, it feels wonderfully comfortable. The younger pilgrim quietly opens the small wooden shutter. Moonlight spills across the floor. He looks toward the monastery chapel. Only a few candles still glow faintly behind the stained glass windows. He smiles. Never before has silence felt so welcoming. He gently closes the shutter. The room grows peaceful once again. Elsewhere, Brother Matthew makes one final visit to the scriptorium. Not to continue writing. The light is far too dim for careful work. Instead, he wishes only to check that every manuscript is safely protected. He moves from desk to desk with a small lantern. Each precious book is covered with clean linen. Each ink pot is sealed. Every quill has been cleaned and returned to its proper place. He gently rests his hand upon one unfinished manuscript. For months he has copied its pages with patient care. Tomorrow, another paragraph will be added. Not tonight. Books, like people, sometimes need to rest. Satisfied, he quietly closes the heavy oak door behind him. The room falls completely dark. High above the monastery, Brother Martin climbs the bell tower one final time. Not to ring the great bell. Its work is finished until dawn. Instead, he simply wishes to enjoy the view. The narrow spiral staircase is familiar beneath his feet. He could almost climb it with his eyes closed. At the top, he steps into the cool night air. The silence is breathtaking. Below him, every building lies peacefully asleep. The bakery chimney no longer sends smoke into the sky. The forge is cold. The gardens shimmer faintly beneath the moonlight. Beyond the monastery walls, endless forests roll across the mountains like gentle waves frozen in silver. A fox slips quietly along the edge of the trees. Far away, a stream catches the moonlight, winding through the valley like a ribbon of polished glass. Brother Martin leans lightly against the stone wall. He has watched this same view through every season. Spring blossoms, summer storms, autumn mists, winter snow. Year after year, the landscape changes slowly. Yet somehow, it always feels timeless. Back in the dormitory, the brothers prepare for sleep. Each monk's room is nearly identical. A straw mattress, a wool blanket, a small wooden stool, a single shelf, a clay pitcher filled with fresh water. Nothing more. Nothing less. Brother Thomas carefully folds his robe. Brother Peter quietly blows out the candle in his room. The tiny flame disappears. Darkness settles gently around him. He lies down upon the simple mattress. Outside his window, crickets continue their soft evening chorus. The scent of pine drifts through the cool air. His breathing gradually slows. The day's work is finished. There are no unfinished meetings. No urgent letters. No tomorrow's schedule to organize. The bell will tell him everything he needs to know when morning comes. For now, rest is enough. Across the monastery, dozens of small windows grow dark one after another. Only the chapel sanctuary lamp continues glowing faintly through the night. Its steady flame reminds the brothers that even while they sleep, the monastery remains quietly awake in spirit. Above, countless stars continue their slow journey across the heavens. The moon climbs higher. Mist begins gathering once more in the valleys below. The forests whisper softly beneath the cool mountain wind. The remote monastery, hidden among ancient peaks, finally surrenders to complete silence. Not an empty silence. A peaceful one. A silence earned through honest work. shared meals, gentle kindness, and lives lived without hurry. Tonight, the stone walls hold nothing but dreams. And somewhere beyond the mountains, a new dawn is already preparing to arrive. The night has become wonderfully deep. The monastery sleeps beneath a sky overflowing with stars. The last lantern has long since gone dark. The kitchen fires have cooled into soft gray ash. The forge is silent. The bakery is still. Even the wind seems to move more gently now, as though careful not to disturb the peaceful rhythm of this lonely mountain sanctuary. Beyond the monastery walls, the forests breathe quietly beneath the moonlight. An owl glides soundlessly between the ancient pine trees. Far below, the narrow stream continues its endless journey through the valley, whispering over smooth stones just as it has for thousands of years. Nothing asks to be hurried. Nothing struggles against the passing hours. Time itself feels softer here. While the brothers sleep, the monastery continues its own quiet work. The thick stone walls slowly release the warmth they gathered during the day. The old oak beams settle with the faintest creak. Rainwater collected in the stone cistern reflects the stars like a polished mirror. Inside the chapel, one small sanctuary lamp still burns steadily before the altar. Its tiny flame has watched over countless nights like this. Generation after generation. Century after century. The flame reminds anyone who sees it that even in darkness, a little light is enough. Outside, dew begins forming once again upon the herb garden. Tiny drops gather along lavender blossoms. Silver beads cling to rosemary leaves. Spider webs stretched between low shrubs sparkle beneath the moon as though woven from threads of crystal. By morning, the first rays of sunlight will transform every drop into a tiny jewel. Hours pass almost unnoticed. The moon slowly sinks toward the western horizon. The stars begin fading one by one. The eastern sky changes so gradually that only the patient would notice. Black becomes charcoal. Charcoal softens into deep blue. Then a faint ribbon of pale silver appears above the distant mountains. Another day quietly approaches. Inside the dormitory, Brother Matthew opens his eyes before the bell has rung. Not because he heard a sound. Simply because years of faithful routine have gently trained his body. He remains still for a moment, listening. Silence. The same peaceful silence that welcomed him to sleep now welcomes him back into wakefulness. He smiles quietly. Another ordinary day has been given. He sits upon the edge of his simple wooden bed. The floor is cool beneath his feet. The small clay pitcher still holds fresh mountain water gathered yesterday. He splashes a little onto his face. The cold water instantly clears the last traces of sleep. He folds his wool blanket carefully, straightens the straw mattress, places his wooden stool neatly beneath the table. No one will inspect the room. No reward waits for perfect order. Yet small acts done faithfully shape the person performing them. Outside his narrow window, the first robin sings. Only one. Soon another answers. Then a third. Before long, the entire forest joins the morning chorus. The mountain is waking. Elsewhere, Brother Thomas quietly returns to the bakery. He kneels before yesterday's ashes. Beneath the gray surface, tiny orange embers still glow faintly. With practiced hands, he adds dry pine kindling. Then slightly larger branches. He blows gently. A thread of smoke rises. Another careful breath. A tiny flame appears. Slowly. Patiently. The bakery comes back to life. Soon fresh bread will once again fill the monastery with its comforting aroma. Nearby, Brother Peter steps into the herb garden carrying a small woven basket. Morning dew wets the edges of his sandals. He pauses for a moment, simply breathing the cool mountain air. Mint. Chamomile. Wet earth. Pine. He has smelled these same fragrances for decades. Yet they never grow ordinary. Some beauties reveal themselves only to those willing to notice them every day. High above them all, Brother Martin reaches the bell tower. The eastern horizon now glows softly with the first light of dawn. Mist still blankets the valley below like a white sea. Only the tallest hills rise above it like distant islands. He places both hands upon the familiar hemp rope. For one peaceful moment, he simply looks. The monastery rests quietly beneath him. The gardens. The orchard. The guest house. The chapel. The stone walls. The winding mountain path disappearing into the forest. Everything waits. Everything is ready. He smiles. Then he pulls. The great bronze bell begins to move. Its deep voice rolls across the waking mountains. One slow note. Then another. The same sound that awakened the brothers yesterday. The same sound that welcomed them years ago. The same sound that will continue long after every living monk has returned to the earth. Doors quietly open throughout the monastery. Sandals touch cool stone floors. Lanterns glow softly for a few final moments before sunrise fills every corridor. The brothers make their way once again toward the chapel. Guests stir in the guest house. The shepherds in distant valleys hear the familiar bell drifting across the hills. Birds rise into the brightening sky. The monastery has completed another full day. And now, another begins. Almost exactly the same. Yet entirely new. Perhaps that is the quiet lesson this remote monastery has been offering all along. A meaningful life does not always require great adventures. It may simply ask us to wake with gratitude, to work with care, to share what we have, to rest without regret, and to greet each new morning with a peaceful heart. As the first golden rays of sunlight touch the ancient stone walls, the monastery seems to glow from within. The bell falls silent. The brothers enter the chapel. The mountain welcomes another dawn. And somewhere, perhaps far away, you too have found a little stillness among these ancient stones. So, as the quiet chants begin once more and the morning light slowly fills the valley, you can simply let go of the day. Allow your thoughts to drift like the mist over the mountains. And, if sleep has not already carried you away, may it find you now. Good night. And may peace walk gently beside you until morning.